All right, let's start with our top 5 favorite drafts. We both put our own little list together. What are your top 5 favorite drafts? I struggled with this. Did you struggle with this as I did?
I did, to the point where I had 6. I had it narrowed down to 6, and I couldn't remove one, so I just literally at random cut one out. And then I was hoping that you would have one of the ones I cut out on your 5, and you did. So it works out okay.
Yeah, I saw yours come. I saw yours come through, and I wanted to mix it up, make sure we got some extra love in there for some teams.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that the one I was going to cut was good enough that it would make your list anyway. But I did. Like I tweeted this out, right? And we've talked about this a bit before. Collectively, I think the NFL is getting smarter. I think you see this in free agency, you see it with trades, you see it in the draft. You see it's harder now to find the mark. It's harder to find the dumb franchise that's just doing idiot things left, right, and center. Everybody's doing a pretty good job. And so I keep reaching these drafts. I'm like, there's so many drafts I think that are absolutely killing it right now. So yeah, I really struggled to nail it down, but I have my list of 5. Am I just going through all 5 of them?
I would just list your 5 and then we'll talk about them. And then I'll list my 5. We'll talk about them and go from there.
All right. My 5, and I'm not putting them in order. I couldn't even narrow it down to 5, let alone ranking them.
Listen. We're free now, man. This is our show. We don't have anybody saying we're going to SEO, top 5 list. You got to rank them 1, 2, 3, 4. We can do whatever we want. All right? All tied for first. They're all tied for first.
Right.
Whatever you want.
Nobody's going to force me to write a listicle. It's not going to happen.
That's right. No listicles here.
All right. New England Patriots. I thought the Patriots absolutely killed it in this draft. There were a couple of things like minor quibbles here or there, but overall they kept grabbing players that I loved. I thought this was a great draft. I think the Cleveland Browns had a fantastic draft. People hate this, right? Because it's weird. It's not a normal draft. But I think if you step back for a second, divorce yourself from the Shedeur Sanders drama, and just look at the players they acquired from the starting point that they were in and say, this is what the Browns are going to end up getting in addition to a first-round draft pick next year. I think the Browns had a spectacular draft. The Kansas City Chiefs, same thing. Like they just kept getting players that I thought were incredible value all the way through the draft, which always somehow seems more impressive when you're drafting at the bottom of each round. And, you look up and, oh, wow, look at this amazing player they got at the bottom of this round. The Raiders, I love the Raiders draft. The Genty pick is interesting because, it's right at the top of the range of like how much value you want to put into a running back and all those kinds of things. But overall, I thought they did a spectacular job of like mixing really good, surefire things and perfect calculated risks. Love that draft. And then the Seahawks. I love some of the picks they picked. They, again, combination. They didn't overthink things. They grabbed players that fit areas of need, and they roll the dice with a high upside quarterback in Jalen Milroe, who I think is a fantastic character guy in addition to having the talent that he could turn into a quarterback in the future.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any on that list. Raiders could be like the biggest wild card. I know our friend Arif said they're the most fun. I mean, when you talk about Jack Bash and Dante Thornton as weapons, Ashton Genty as a weapon, JJ Pegues is a defensive tackle who's a 320-pound direct snap and fullback type of player for Ole Miss. It's a lot to like about the Raiders. Darian Porter at corner, just fun players there. I like that list. I'll go through my top 5. There's some crossover. We could talk about some of these teams a little bit more in depth. But my top 5, I started with the Browns. Here's the challenge in all of this, right? Usually when the draft grades come out for everybody, usually the teams that draft 8 or 10 times, more than your 7 are going to get the highest grades. But and we don't always do this the right way based off like, what did you start with? The Vikings started with 4 picks. Did they maximize what they started the weekend with? Or do you factor in, we always play this game, do you factor in the moves that led to losing the picks? But again, if you came into the weekend and you said where the Browns are as an organization that needs a reset and needs future just resources, I think they did that. And then again, from a process perspective, you say, hey, they've got no quarterback. And they come away with Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. And look, we're higher on Gabriel than a lot of other people are. Fine. I don't care. Mm-hmm. If you're 100% on your QB evaluations and you don't like a guy, don't take him. Don't waste it. But until you're 100%, take some shots at quarterback to try to solve your problem. So they have 2 young QBs to compete. They traded down, got Mason Graham. They picked up an extra first rounder, added a lot of talent to the team. A lot of good football players. 2 good running backs. Carson Schwessinger, I love it. Linebacker, Harold Fannins. I cannot disagree with what the Browns have done as a whole. I thought the Baltimore Ravens did a really nice job. We'll talk about the Mike Green pick throughout the weekend and everything. I mean, that's the big wild card. You got a top 10, top 15 type of player in round 2. Malachi Starks, really good football player in round 1. You go into round 6, there's some players you like. That's the other tricky part, evaluating draft, Sam. Like when we love players and they go in rounds 5, 6, and 7, and
Right.
you can't like overweigh it because they went there for a reason. They might not get opportunities, but I think the Ravens did a nice job just adding talent throughout the draft. I have the Chiefs as well. Every single time, Josh Simmons, guy that could have gone a lot higher, might solve their long-term left tackle problem. Omar Norman-Lott. They get Jalen Royals a little bit later on day 3 as a receiver. Noel Williams at cornerback, just a lot of talent at the right times, right? They just kept picking what seemingly one of the best 2 or 3 players on the board at each time at pretty important positions. Arizona Cardinals, similar for me. And we'll talk about their entire offseason. I didn't actually have them as the best offseason. One of the best offseasons for me. Their defensive line overhaul. Walter Nolan in the first round here. Will Johnson in the second round. I mean, they just added so many bodies on that defensive line. So really loving what the Cardinals did. And then the New York Giants. I had to put the Giants in there. And maybe Cam Scatterbo put me over the top on day 3. Maybe that's what put me over the top. But the Giants make the right move at the top to go Abdul Carter. They get Darius Alexander with the top pick of round 3. So now you're looking at when the listicles come out this offseason, Sam, the articles that are lists, and somebody out there, and Bleacher Reports putting their top defensive lines out there, and PFF's putting their top defensive lines out there, the Giants are coming to mind at the top, right? We're considering the Giants in the top 3 or 4. Great foundation that they've laid there. And then they give up 2 threes to trade up for Jackson Dart. And again, process guy. You took a shot on a quarterback. You gave up 2 threes. Great. Do that at pick 25. I don't know if Jackson Dart's going to – he's got starter goods. He could be a good starter. You had to take that shot, and they did it. You had Scatterbo in the 4th. And, yeah, you're ticking a lot of boxes for me if you're the Giants. So I put them in my top 5 and just really love the direction, the process, and the direction they seem to be going. If they win 4 games this year, hey, Joe Shane's out, Brian Daboll's out. But I honestly think that the foundation they've laid the last couple of years, maybe minus quarterback, if Dart doesn't work out, it's a pretty good foundation that they've laid the last couple seasons. The
Giants were the team that I cut from my list. They were on my initial list of 6 that didn't make the cut when I went down to 1. Somebody sent me a tweet. Who was it? What was his name on Twitter? Gerd Dog on Twitter sent me this thing where if you just rearrange the picks that the Browns players were drafted at and then forget what happened this weekend. So forget that Shador went on this crazy historic fall. And if you were told before the draft that the Browns would come out of this draft having taken Mason Graham at 5, Shador Sanders at 33, so the top of the second round, Carson Schwessinger at 36, also the top of the second round, Quinshon Judkins at 67, Harold Fannin at 94, Dylan Sampson at 126, and then Dylan Gabriel at 144, and get a 2026 first-round pick out of the Jags.
Yes.
You would say that's knocking it out of the park. Like home run hit, one of the best things they could possibly have done with this draft. When everyone was saying, do they take quarterback at the top of the draft? Do they go a different position? They end up going neither. They trade down a few spots. But if you were saying that was their draft haul in that exact order, you'd be like, that's one of the best drafts you could possibly have. It's only because we saw this weirdness of, Shador falling out of the first round and then falling through day 2 and then being all the way to the 5th round and them taking, Dylan Gabriel for him, that it's like, it can't possibly be good because it's weird. It's strange. It's not what we thought prior to going into the draft. But I think you look at the players and you say, that's a great haul.
Hey, guys, just taking a quick break to tell you, hey, just over 50% of you are still unsubscribed to Check the Mic. It helps the channel. It helps to make sure that you don't miss any of our shows. So if you have a chance, hit the subscribe button right now. I completely agree. It would have broken the mock draft simulators. A++++. I can't believe you got all those players and you were patient on Shador Sanders and you got him in the second. This is before the fall, right? The one dynamic, though, is because all that drama happened, is there more drama, right? Like if they had just drafted Dylan Gabriel late, it's like, they're just taking a shot on Dylan Gabriel. Shedeur Sanders is their guy. Now it's like a little bit more drama in the building. And look, I don't want to overrate the reaction of the Browns. I need a reaction for every pick. If we could go back and if we could get side-by-sides on how the Browns draft room reacted to every pick, I just need to know if it was tempered a little bit on Shedeur Sanders or if they're just like business, golf clap, act like you've been there before, unlike other draft rooms. I need to know because that reaction made me a little bit, is this the owner? Is this the owner coming in saying get Shedeur Sanders? But yeah, process-wise, taking swings at quarterbacks always near and dear to my heart because I did suggest this a month ago for the Browns.
And because it's now a 5th round pick, like the risk is so small now. Like, yeah, the drama might be much higher now that he's a 5th round pick, et cetera. But if it is a giant headache, if it is a giant media circus, a huge pain in the ass, and he's not worth it, and he shows nothing when he rocks up, cut him after training camp, cut him in training camp. It doesn't matter. Like people cut 5th round picks relatively regularly. It's not a big deal, and you still came out of the draft with Mason Graham, with Carson Swessinger, with Quinshon Judkins, Harold Fannin, Dylan Sampson, Dylan Gabriel, and a 1st round pick next year. Even if you take Shedeur out of that draft, it looks pretty good. And, you could cut him with zero sort of negativity, essentially. So I think that's a great draft by the Browns.
Look, there was a lot of teams that I cut that I was close to saying, hey, I love this draft. I mean, I hate not having Houston up here. I think there's so much to like about Houston's draft. I liked the Giants trading up, but I equally liked the Texans trading down. And their first 3 picks, the 2 Iowa State receivers, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll, Ariante Ursary, the tackle from Minnesota. Those are the key picks for me there for Houston. But I thought that process, those are the most important picks. That process was great. Dallas was close for me. I just didn't love, they had one of my least favorite 1st round picks for the 2nd straight year for Dallas. So, again, if they go back and if they took Walter Nolan, for me, it doesn't matter. But like for me, if they took Walter Nolan first, and then we'll talk later about Donovan Azaraku, Siobhan Revel. I would love that draft. They might be my favorite draft if that was the order that Dallas went. So
agreed.
That's what happens here. Like if there's a pick that you just don't seem to like or whatever it might be.
Learning afterwards that they were debating between Walter Nolan and Tyler Booker is damaging to your opinion of the Dallas Cowboys draft.
And it could have really quick. They may have forced a guard in round 2 and not taken Azaraku, But Sam, this is why we preach this. Don't go in with needs, right? If Dallas felt like they had to get a guard, if they had a guard in free agency, they could have maybe taken Nolan, and they would have had, I think, a much better draft.
Yeah, it definitely, it's going to be damaging to your perception of it because you're like, man, if they had drafted Walter Nolan, we could have had options in the 2nd and 3rd and blah, blah. But the other thing is a little bit like the Browns. I think if you look at just the players and then you change the order, like if I told you that they drafted Donovan Azaraku at 12, Siobhan Revel or Tyler Booker at 44 and then got Revel at 76, in that order, I would feel a lot better about it. Or, if you just change like the 3 players, if you simply redid the order, I think you would feel a lot better about that Dallas haul. And then later in the draft, I think they made some nice moves. So they added a couple of other players that I like as well. So yeah, I think they had a better draft maybe than it feels like because it was like poisoned from the outset by that one of the, I don't want to say worst picks, but one of my least favorite picks of the 1st round with Tyler Booker going at 12 overall. The chat has mentioned it a couple of times. The Carolina Panthers and the late Dr. Eric Eager, still working for the Panthers. I thought they had a really good draft as well. I like a lot of what Carolina did. And they did it in a way that we didn't really anticipate necessarily. Everyone had been throwing an edge rusher to them in the 1st round all the way. They go Tetero and McMillan, and then they come back and get multiple edge rushers. Nick Scorton in the 2nd, Princely Uman-Mielen in the 3rd. Love both those guys as value hits at that point. And then even later in the draft, I think they made a couple of nice spots or nice picks. Cameron Jackson, the big defensive tackle in round 5. Jimmy Horn Jr., the Colorado underrated wide receiver, sort of speed, vertical threat slot guy. I really like him as a 6th round pick as well. So I think the Panthers did good work too.
I agree on the Panthers. And we've had so many conversations, Sam, about you probably get your edge rushers in the 1st round. and there's a really good history of getting second and third round wide receivers. Well, the Panthers did it in reverse.
Right.
But I think in this year's draft, it made sense. Getting Tedoroa McMillan at 8, one of my favorite picks, and then Nick Scorton and Uman Mielen in the second and third round. Scorton was a fringe first rounder, I believe, in most drafts. Uman Mielen, probably more of a second round pick. In this draft, he's a third because of the depth at edge. So I think they played the board the right way. They also traded up, I think, for both of those players. So I think they made some targets and made sure that need and value matched up. So, yeah, I completely agree. I think they did a nice job. I hate not talking about the Bills as well. I'm not going to list every favorite team.
That's the other one that definitely needs to be mentioned.
So in Bills fans were asking why the run on corners, and I mentioned on our 6th round thing, if you need to load up on depth at certain positions, O-line, D-line, corner, and receiver. I want crazy depth there, but especially corner and especially the defensive line, and that was the draft for the Bills. Corner, 3 defensive linemen. Their first 4 picks had all been first round adjacent at some point in this process as far as mock drafting, including Deion Walker in the 4th round, Landon Jackson in the 3rd round. So I think they're talented guys who have that proverbial upside, especially Walker. And then, Maxwell Hairston in the 1st at corner, Darian Strong as a corner in the 6th, who's probably more of a 3rd or 4th round value. So yeah, there's a lot to like about what the Bills did and just loading up on defense, a place where they've had numerous injuries and was a big part of why they lost to the Chiefs each of the last 2 years.
Yeah, agreed. I think Landon Jackson was a steal. I think Dorian Strong is a steal. They got multiple players throughout this draft, I think, that were really, really good value. And, they attacked it in volume. Like, it's multiple different ways of drafting well. Again, I think the Bills were one of those teams that was difficult to cut from the final list.
I'll just answer it right now. Eric Novella, super chat, appreciate it. What grade would you give the Giants? I think it's an A. I mean, I like, and again, most people grade like, did you draft players I like? I'm guilty of that. Did you draft players
Sure.
I like? There's a little bit of that. Did you draft them at the right time? Was your process sound, right? Did you give up too many picks to trade up or whatever? I think the Giants ticked a lot of boxes, got the right players at the right time, and they traded up for a QB. So I like a lot of what the Giants did in this draft. That's why they're in my top 5.
I mean, ultimately, there has to be part of that in this whole process, right? Like, did I like the player or not? Otherwise, what's the point? Like, yeah, we can all look objectively, how do they do versus a consensus ranking, right? Just mathematically. But there's also got to be a part of, like, do you agree with that ranking? Do you think, now I'm not saying you put all of your, like, you don't rank your opinion as, 85 times as valuable as the consensus mock. Otherwise, you end up doing what NFL teams used to do, where they're just like, I don't care where everybody else has these players, I'm just drafting them, right? We know that's not a good way of doing things because almost nobody is good at that, right? Nobody is so much better than groupthink at evaluating talent. So, you look at the consensus board, you see, is there a difference between these consensus players and where they were drafted? Or you take a player that was drafted at the right area in consensus, and the sort of tiebreaker with these becomes, well, did I like that player as much as the consensus or not, or otherwise, right? So it's got to be part of your evaluation, whether you like the players or not.
So yeah, there's a lot of drafts I like. Let me throw one more team out there really quick because I've raved about them for a while. It's the Bucs. I just think the Bucs, you called it, just hitting the ball down the fairway. The way I described it is, dating back to last year, almost all of their picks, you're not guessing what they're going to be at the next level. They're just good football players across the board. I know that sounds generic, but we're not explaining upside. You're not explaining if this thing happens and that thing happens, this guy could figure it out, or he's got, it's just these guys are good football players that they can plug and play, and they've done that specifically for 2 straight years. So I really like what the Bucs have done, and they're in my fringe as far as favorite drafts for 2 straight years now.
Yeah, we described them as like having the safest draft in the world. They were just every single pick. It was like they asked themselves, who is the safest player we could possibly pick? And they went like 5 straight, extremely safe picks. And then rolled the dice with Tez Johnson at the bottom of the draft, the Oregon gimmick wide receiver, I guess we can call him, in the 7th round, though. So it's like, who cares if you're risking it? Like, Tez Johnson in the 7th, guy ran a slow 40, he's 155 pounds, he's 5'10". Who cares? He barbecues people with quickness and route running in the 7th round. Like, absolutely get that guy in.
Let me tell you what messes with my brain so much. Anytime you have fewer than 7 picks, it's hard for me to like it. and the Bucs only had 6, but I still liked it. The Bengals had fewer than 6, so here's the difference. They had 6. They had fewer than 7. So the Bengals come away with a running back and 2 linebackers and an upside edge. But like when 3 out of your 6 picks, it's like linebackers and running backs out of only 6. It's hard for me to get behind it, right? And the Bucs come away with 2 receivers, 2 corners, and 2 edges. They hit the valuable positions, and they got good football players at them. So that's what I like about the Bucs draft. All right.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the Bengals draft is basically going to come down to what Shamar Stewart becomes. Like, he's such a high variance player in the middle of the first round. If he hits a high end of his range of outcomes, the rest of the draft basically doesn't matter. If he hits a low end, the rest of the draft doesn't matter either, but for different reasons.
And I didn't hate Demetrius Knight or Dylan Fairchild. I'm just saying, like, when you come out, when you have 6 picks and you get 2 linebackers, a running back, a guard, and maybe a second guard/tackle, and Jalen Rivers, the lower value positions in a year, we only have 6 picks. Doesn't feel great. That's all. It just doesn't feel great. Let us know in the chat. Who's your favorite draft? Who did we forget? I saw some Titans love in there. I think after Cam Ward, they did fine. They got players a lot of people like. I really like Kevin Winston Jr. I like when they got Io Manor, wide receiver out of Stanford. We'll go team by team over the next few days, though.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.